HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambi. With Bambi, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambi's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambi starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambi can take off your plate. Go to Bambi.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambi.com. Type in Accelerate.
Remember back in January when a group of Redditors drove up the price of GameStop?
It was discombobulating. It was disturbing. Like, what the hell is going on?
I'm Annie Minoff, and I also wanted to know what was going on. Since then, I've talked to dozens of people and learned the full story of how a Reddit forum fueled a massive stock surge. One that took Wall Street totally by surprise.
I should have known. Yes, I should have, but I did not.
Follow our 5-part series on The Journal, Sundays starting May 30th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business. Whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing, guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken audio entertainment and information. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Over the years, Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast has enjoyed inclusion on lists of the best podcasts to listen to, and continues to gain recognition as a great resource for small business owners, sales professionals, business leaders in general. And this is really because of the guests who come on the podcast. These are folks who have expertise in certain areas of business, and they join me for a conversation where they share that expertise with all of you. That way you can get what you need when you need it, so that you can be doing better things in your business, enjoying it more, and being more successful. Today's no different. My guest today is Lee Colan. Lee co-founded the L Group Incorporated, a leadership and organizational development consulting firm in 1999. Lee's passion for serving leaders enables him to deliver cut-through-the-clutter tools that elevate leaders and their teams. He was nominated for Top Management Thinker globally by Thinkers 50. He's also the author of the new book, The Power of Positive Coaching. Thanks so much for joining me today, Lee.
Thank you, Diane. My pleasure. Appreciate you having me.
I am thrilled to have you here. We're going to be talking about positive thinking and positive coaching, which I love this whole, I am considered a positive thinker. So I am curious, what are essential habits that someone needs to have to build a positive mindset?
Yes, in any situation, whether it's a coaching situation, Diane, or you're dealing with your kids or a colleague, or you're working in the community, if you want to get kind of winning results in relationships, there are always great coaching habits you have to have, right? And there are a few of them we boil down in part of the book. But in any situation, the mindset that you bring in is going to dictate how well that interaction goes. So we're really big on first building a positive mindset before you go into kind of any kind of interaction. And so there are 4 levels of awareness we talk about that you need to have kind of deepen your awareness around, and they are your thoughts. And we always say, the game of life is won the 6 inches between your ears, so it's really about your attitude, right? So it's your thoughts, your purpose, your values, and your emotions. So really understanding those and being able to master those brings a much higher level of effectiveness into any interaction that you might have, and drastically increases the chances that you'll get what you want out of that relationship and really get what you both want out of it. So it's really about, as any leader, you're trying to create winning results and relationships, and that's really what a positive mindset helps bring to the table.
Okay, let's talk some about emotions, because there's a lot that goes on about we shouldn't have emotion. It's like, there's no crying in baseball.
Right.
But you've written a chapter on why you need to know your emotions. So why is that important?
Well, if you think about it, we're really are emotional beings. So we really do need to understand them and be able to master them to be able to kind of be as effective as we can be. It's not just about getting what we want, but also creating the kind of relationship that we want. So, if you think about the animal kingdom, you have stimulus and response, right? If a mouse sees cheese, the mouse is going to eat the cheese. It doesn't really have a choice in the matter, just going to eat the cheese. But as humans, it's the equation is slightly different. So it's stimulus, and in the middle we insert choice and then response. So we all have a choice in terms of how we react to things. Even if we feel like we're running around crazy, our boss is telling us all the things to do, or our employees are telling us, or our customers, and we're just reacting all day, the fact is we still do have choices. So part of that choice is being able to understand our emotions and not react to the emotions, because if we do, then we're just like the animals. It's stimulus and response. To the extent we can have a deeper understanding of why I'm feeling that, and maybe even why another person's feeling something and they're reacting to me a certain way before I just lash out, to understand that emotion, even if it's somebody else's emotion, let alone our own emotions, we are more likely to kind of craft a response versus react. We're keen to distinguish between reactions and responses. So we want to craft a response that enables us to build the relationship and build the results that we want. So it's really critical. I think it's at the core of any personal, any personal leader, right? If you're leading just yourself, let alone a business leader, is to really master his or her emotions.
Yeah, it's interesting. It takes that self-awareness, right? You have to really be able to stop and think, okay, hang on a second, this is really where I am, and I don't want to say the first thing that's in my head.
Right.
Given how I'm
we
feeling,
will coach. I'll coach my kids. I'll coach executives that rarely has a great decision ever been made that is born strictly out of your emotional reaction, right?
Yeah.
We love leaders and we love people that are passionate about what they do and their life, but that passion shouldn't be mixed up with making emotional decisions, right? So there's a balance that we do want people that are passionate about what they're doing, and if you can be passionate about it, then you also know that I need to be making the best decisions along the way and reacting in a way that helps me move toward the thing I'm passionate about. That's your why, if you will, like kind of what Simon Sinek's work on what's your why, right? So it's like, what's your why? What's the real reason you're doing this? If you can let that be your true north, your lighthouse out there, and then say, okay, if that's really what I'm trying to drive at, then I need to be careful about just reacting to how I'm feeling right now. I mean, the world would be in a much worse place than it is even right now if everyone just reacted to what they're feeling in the moment. Our emotions are actually fairly deceiving. So we need to be able to kind of filter through them and understand what's underneath them and use that insight and that level of awareness and knowledge to then craft the appropriate response.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I get it now. I get why, that's such an important thing. So sort of pulling off of that whole idea, talk to me some about how leaders can build better relationships with their teams, because I feel like this is a really big thing. I was going to say problem, but I'll say thing.
Yeah.
That goes on a lot in businesses of all sizes that doesn't need to. It's sort of like unnecessary strife.
Yeah. Well, Diane, we believe leadership's an inside job, right? So it starts with your self-leadership first and then moves out from there to your team leadership and then ultimately an organization. How do you lead an organization? But so in terms of building better relationships with others, it really starts with the relationship with yourself. And I hate to tie right back to it, but it's really about your own awareness of and understanding of your thoughts, the thoughts you have in your mind, which lead to the beliefs you have, which ultimately lead to your actions. So it's your thoughts, your purpose in the role that you're in. If you're a leader, what is your real purpose in your role? Your personal values and what you bring to the table, and what does that mean in terms of what your team can expect from you and what you expect from them, and then also, as we mentioned before, your awareness of your emotions. So if you start with that, you bring a much more effective, authentic self to the interaction, to the relationship, that makes it much easier for others to connect with you. But if you're bringing lots of junk, blind spots, baggage to the table, you're just putting a lot of barriers up for people to be able to connect with the real you. They're either having to tap dance or figure out, well, he said this, but does he really mean that? Or did she mean this? So really the relationships with others starts with the relationship with yourself. And we see this, listen, I saw this in college, and I see it all the way up now as we deal with executives. I remember 20 some odd years ago talking to my parents going, thank you for loving me unconditionally and giving me a good sense of self and self-esteem, because I see that as a resident assistant back then, how it's playing out even then as people trying to fill holes or struggling with relationships because they were struggling with their own relationship with themselves. And then honestly, years later, we do work with a lot of executives, and many of the issues come back to that also. So I would just reiterate by saying it really starts inward, right? So with that in mind, let me try to more directly answer your question, if that's all right.
Sure.
And say that winning relationships often comes from helping people create winning results. So as a coach, there are these 4 levels of awareness, but then there are also 5 coaching habits we talk about that if you can help people become successful, you also, in a positive way, you're also developing a good relationship along the way. It's not like I just have to develop this relationship and get close with my people and there's this blurry line. If you just help your people become successful and the best versions of themselves, i.e. help them achieve their potential, you'll create the positive relationship that'll come from that. So I think sometimes people worry so much about either driving results, and they sacrifice relationships, or I want to work on the relationship so much that they're really not getting the results, and so their employees become their friends, but they're really not getting the mutual results that they want. They're so intertwined that we believe that if you just help people become the best version of themselves and move toward achieving the business results and the team's results, the relationships will come. Because when we talk to people about who your best leaders were, they're all talking about, they may not have been like my best friend, but man, they were awesome. They had a positive impact in my life. I could trust them. They had my back. Those kind of things come out. I just want to draw the distinction that you don't have to necessarily be someone's best friend to have a great working relationship with them.
Yeah, because it's really more about respect. And I love this idea of focusing on helping them succeed, because it just has a different focus, but just feeling to it, that you're not thinking about yourself, you're not thinking about driving the numbers, you're thinking about, what you realize is, okay, if each one of the people on my team are succeeding, whatever that means, then we're all going to succeed.
Right.
The whole place is going to be better, and they are going to be happier, and we will have a better relationship because of that. That's really, I love that concept.
Yeah. And we find the most inspiring coaches and leaders really focus on how many people they serve versus how many people are serving them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really, they view their role as one of servant, and how do I help this person become the best person they could be, not just the best employee they could be. And if we're I think, again, the best leaders and coaches really view themselves as servants to others. And so if we can help people achieve the kind of success that they want, our success will come with that. Right.
Absolutely. Right. It's like sales. When you focus on, not on selling, but on helping someone solve a problem, right? And then you sell. It's when you're focused on yourself that you're.
Yeah. And it's easier said than done, because we live in such a kind of a fame and reward driven culture. Everyone wants the spoils. They want they want all the trappings that come with success, and they forget about the process. And it's like, you know what, don't worry about that. Just do the work every day, day in and day out. Create those daily habits of creating positive, relationships, a positive relationship with yourself, your own conversations with yourself, your own awareness, have that pour out into your team, and then good things will come. So I know it sounds like soft, but it's really very predictable over time. You talk to the most successful people, and they'll say, I didn't really try to become a billionaire. I didn't try to become the biggest this or the biggest that. I was just I was really passionate about our craft and the process and putting in the work every day. And it's no different with a leadership or a small company or a big company. Yeah.
Okay. So I agree with you. I know it can feel a little soft. I totally get that. But you say that the steps to a positive mindset are things we do every day. So can you give me some examples of that?
Yeah. So, for example, we talked about emotions a little bit. Let's just touch on those. So simple things. We talked about mastering your emotions, but okay, that's just a concept. Like, what do you do? So just some simple things you could do, like something like just keeping a journal every day, right? So you kind of know, this is what I felt like. This is what it felt like today to struggle with this employee, or to not get that project, or to win a big deal. This is what it felt like. And until you could kind of name your emotions, it's hard to manage them. So really kind of talking through, not talking through, but like writing down, what are you feeling each day? So I think a private journal is a helpful thing. Another one is just working on your empathy. So we're thinking about, how does this make someone else feel? This isn't about me. So if I say this to someone, again, the goal here is to build winning results and relationships. So how am I building somebody up so they could be the best they could be? And if someone reacts to me in a certain way, so I don't just immediately react emotionally. Remember, stimulus, choice, response. What choice do I have to say, why did they react that way? Let me try to get underneath that emotional reaction before I react back to them, because then we get this quick spiral up of emotional reactions. And one little rule that we love, that we tend to use a lot, is just called the 5x5 rule, that if it won't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes being upset by it. Right. So it's just a very practical thing that just keeps things in perspective. Okay. I'm in the moment, and it's great to be mindful. And I think that's part of being mindful. It's like, okay, I'm in the moment, and this could really seem like a big thing, but it's also important in mindfulness to kind of step back and have perspective and say, you know what, is this really going to matter? And so should I really spend a lot of time on that? But there's research that'll show us that an emotional reaction to something lasts really seconds, really maybe a matter of minutes at the most. But the reason it plays out is that we continue to play it out in our mind. So if you're happy about something great that happened in business, or upset about something, it's a quick reaction. The emotion lasts just a matter of moments. It's how we replay it that continues to give it life. So particularly for negative emotions, we can keep replaying it. We could hold a grudge. We could, we could just carry that within us for a long time. And it could be years later, and it feels like we're still feeling it, when it was really a moment in time, and then the rest of it was a choice on how we chose to kind of replay that emotion. There's a phrase in psychotherapy that goes, unexpressed emotions don't go away; they just rear their heads in uglier ways. So I think it's important to, if we're feeling something, to kind of journal it, think through it, be able to express it to ourselves, and ultimately express it to others in a functional, productive way. But if we don't manage them, they're just going to come out in kind of uglier ways. So I love the idea of just, if it's not going to bother you in 10 years or 5 years, just don't spend that much time, 5 minutes even thinking about it.
Boy, no kidding. No kidding. And I love this. Stop for a minute and think about why the other person might be reacting the way they are. I think that's a really big thing, because we react from where we are and how we're feeling instead of stopping and going, okay, hang on a second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I, Stephen Covey's first Seek to Understand, if I ask the
Right.
question, it will probably totally change the way that I respond
Right.
to the situation.
Totally. Yeah. Our questions, and that's one of the coaching habits, is to ask the right questions. And so the questions we ask will either expand or limit the kind of opportunities we end up seeing, for sure. But I remember years ago, I had this epiphany, and I was upset with somebody, the way they were reacting to me, and they would just really get under my skin. And it was in a business setting, and I was like, I just carried that along with me for a long time, until I stepped back to kind of understand, like, why is that happening? And I realized their reaction was coming from a place of deep insecurity. They had a hole they needed to fill, so they needed to break somebody else down instead of build them up. And then I started to use that insight across all the reactions I would have from various people over time, whether it's someone, that I might happen to cut off in traffic, and then all of a sudden they say some not so nice words to me, and I could say, well, they probably have a right to do that. I shouldn't just kind of react right to them, right? So the point here is just to understand and have some empathy, like, why would that person be feeling that way? And I found that my emotions toward other people converted from being frustrated or upset with them to emotions of, like, sympathy, and like, if that means that person really was scared for something, or they were afraid they were going to lose something, or they were very insecure, or they're still trying to prove something. And rarely, once I try to really understand the driving motivation behind someone's behavior, that I was still upset with them. So I just think that level of empathy, and we all have a choice to be able to do that. And I think we could afford a little more civility in today's world and not just react to every emotional reaction we hear. So I think that's a really important part, is to kind of practice that habit of empathy toward others.
I do too. I agree with you. I feel like everyone's tremendously reactive and hanging on to emotions instead of trying to put themselves in someone else's shoes.
Yes. You can still, I always tell our kids, you can still be convicted about a particular stance you want, a belief or whatever you might have. At the same time, you could still be compassionate, right? So being compassionate towards someone doesn't mean you have to give up what you believe. It just means you're willing to listen and try to understand it.
Right.
But I think in today's world, we feel like if you give up your stance, you're selling out, and I'm just not sure that's true.
I agree with you. I'm totally with you on that one. Okay, I'm going to take a quick sponsor break, and then I have some more questions for you.
Great.
Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have over 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can listen to them on any device, including whatever you're hearing us on right now. And if you sign up at our link, which is audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, you get one free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. Some examples of books you can listen to on audible.com are The Inside Track by Peter Sage and The Power of Positive Coaching by our guest, Lee Colan. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, explore the books that are of interest to you, and receive one free audiobook when you sign up for the trial. Today we are speaking with Lee about the power of positive coaching. Okay, so we mentioned before we went on the sponsor break, we were talking about a couple of things, and questions came up, that this is one of these habits. What questions are out there, or, should people be using that really propel engagement?
Yeah. So just to put things in context, so we believe you need to bring a positive mindset to any interaction, a positive coaching mindset, and those are the 4 levels of awareness we touched on. So you have to know your thoughts, your purpose, your values, and your emotions. And once you have a deeper understanding of those, then you could apply the 5 positive coaching habits, which are to explain, ask, involve, measure, and appreciate. And so you triggered something with the asking, and so we believe that we kind of, as human beings, we kind of move toward the direction of the questions that are asked. If you think about science and business and politics, we tend to just any of the questions that are asked, we just tend to kind of gravitate. It really shapes kind of human human existence, let alone, just a coaching interaction or a particular business interaction. So questions are really critical, and I think they are probably one of the most underutilized leadership and coaching tools, just simply asking questions. Socrates 2,000 years ago had it figured out. He had the Socratic method of just asking questions to help kind of develop people's insights. But so before I talk about specific questions, let me just mention that a lot of times people talk about, I just need to ask questions. So they just ask questions versus being purposeful with the question. So we believe before you just ask questions, you need to kind of understand what do you want to understand or get revealed from the questions that you ask. So there are 4 main objectives that we talk about. One is to understand, another is to assess a situation, another is to help people innovate, and another is to motivate. And so each of those, understand, assess, innovate, and motivate, you could want to understand a person or a project or a process, right? Just as you might want to assess a person, or you might want to assess a project or a process. You might want to motivate a person, or you might want to motivate a project or a process to move along. So within each of those, so it's almost like 4 main objectives, but within each of those, then you have to think about, do I want to ask that about a specific person or a project or a process? So we have a whole spread right in the middle of the book that kind of lays all that out, that just kind of helps the reader kind of figure that out. So, but there are a couple of questions that I think are particularly useful that I like, and one that a friend of mine, Bob Ph.D, always talks about. He's a questioning guru. Says and what else, right? So just when someone asks you describe something, and what else. So just it's not even a specific question. It's merely a prompt to help people go on. Because I think what happens, Diane, is when people ask a question, it's almost like they're checking it off. They're not really in the moment. It's like, okay, just check it off. All right, I asked the question, now I move on to the next one, right? Instead of really listening and then really trying to ask a question to seek and get deep understanding of a person or a situation. And so really just kind of using a prompt to draw more out from people. You'd be amazed how much more people don't really tend to respond with lots of detail. So the initial response might be, hey, how did that project go? I think it's going pretty well. All right, so tell me more, or what else is what's going well about it? You could ask that 3 or 4 times, and all of a sudden now you have this rich picture of the real status of the project, and whether it's a project or a relationship or a situation. So just kind of artfully using prompts. I wouldn't even call them magic questions, just to continue to get more information from people. And the other thing is too, particularly in a business setting, people don't really like to be held that accountable. The old saying, accountability is like rain. Everybody knows it's good for you, but nobody wants to get wet. So when you ask someone, are you going to meet your budget? Yeah, we think so. Okay, well, tell me more about that. Are we on track as of this week? What are the barriers, right? So just following up, and more prompts tend to kind of start filling in the blanks, because sometimes people tend to be intentionally or unintentionally a little bit ambiguous. So that would be my biggest best tip on questions versus a particular question that's like the killer question. I think it's very situation and person dependent. I don't think there's a magic question, but there is just kind of the technique of prompting, which enables you to get much more rich information from people, get a better picture.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you bringing up accountability, because I have a question for you about that. I agree that people don't necessarily want to be held accountable. I also find that leaders don't necessarily want to hold people accountable, because then they'd have to do something about the person not meeting whatever benchmark they were supposed to meet. Right? So they just don't ask about it because they don't necessarily want to know.
Right. Well, you're reacting in the way most of us react. When you hear the word accountability, you tend to think of the back end. So in other words, someone didn't do something and there has to be some consequence, right? And we are believers in what we call front end loading accountability. So if you think of that, if my goal as a leader or a coach is to make someone successful on the back end, I've got to be really clear up front. And that starts with the first habit I mentioned earlier, was explaining expectations. We have to explain, we have to ask questions, we have to involve the person, we have to measure. But it all starts with explaining up front. And we find that a lot of times people are hesitant to keep people accountable because they really weren't clear up front. So I'm feeling like, well, it's kind of like subjective. It's my judgment. Is this really fair? And the leader starts second guessing him or herself. So to the extent you could be really clear, crystal clear up front, where we say unclear expectations lead to unclear destinations. So if you can be really clear up front, your job as a leader is to help your person be successful. It's not about having to slap them on the wrist or have a tough discussion later on. You want to do everything possible up front so they're successful on the back end. They know what success looks like. They're coached along the way. They're given feedback along the way. That's part of kind of the whole positive coaching method. It's not about waiting on the back end. Now, listen, we don't want to be Pollyanna about it. On the back end, still there'll be people that didn't get where you wanted to go. But the point is, they know you have a vested interest in them being successful along the way. So it really starts up front with explaining expectations. When we do executive coaching, 80% of the issues that come up is around people just weren't really clear up front. So I would just say, if you could be clear up front and what I call front end load accountability, be clear with your expectations and how you're going to measure success, and then support them along the way. Again, it's never perfect, but it sure makes it a lot easier. You could totally shift. If 80% of your time is having to have those tougher conversations, you could totally flip that and make it 80% of the time are conversations about celebration, and 20% might be tougher. But it's all, to me, accountability is one on the front end with expectations.
I completely agree with you. I really appreciate you explaining that to the listeners, because I completely agree. I think that the reason that I totally get it. People, leaders, small business owners, making sure people understand what is expected of them and what the consequences are, and making sure they have the resources to be able to do what's expected of them. Mm-hmm. It is critical, and that's the leader's role. That's their responsibility. I get that. I like this whole front-end loaded thing. That makes a lot of sense.
We talk about what we'll call the circle of consequences. You just mentioned consequences. That it's worth a 2-minute conversation with any employee once you hand them off a product or a new process or a new level of responsibility, is to talk about, okay, what does this mean for you now? What do you have to do maybe differently or more of? And how is that going to impact our team? How does it ultimately affect our organization? How's it going to affect our customers? And then ultimately it comes right back to you. How does it affect even our shareholders? And then back to you. So it's a circle. It starts with you and ends with you. And it's totally okay to make it of self-interest, because everyone wants to know, like, okay, what does this mean for me if I succeed? So let them know, if you do this well, that means you're going to get to present something to upper management, get exposure to them. It means you're going to get to build a broader skill set and be more eligible for a promotion. That means you might have a better chance of getting your incentive bonus. Whatever it is, but let people know that walk them through the circle of consequences up front. I think it's really important. And people want to know that. And sometimes managers think, well, they're just here to work. Like, everyone wants to know, like, what's in it for me? And that's it's a fair question. It's an okay question for people to ask. So I would say, rather than having it be asked silently or let it go unanswered, just be explicit about it and walk people through that circle of consequences.
Yeah, there's no downside to it at all.
No, absolutely not. They're clear on it. They know, and they know if I get it done, this is the good stuff's going to happen. And by default, if I don't, these things won't happen. So, and again, what we hear from leaders is, I'm just too busy for that. My people know what they want. And I was like, listen, setting clear expectations up front is the ultimate pay me now or pay me later leadership proposition. You're either going to get it done right now, and people are going to be clear, and you're going to be aligned, and you're going to more than likely get success on the back end. Or I know exactly what you're going to be doing in a day, a week, a month, or a quarter from now. You're going to be having that same conversation, because if you weren't clear up front on the first time, you're going to have to come back and re-clarify later. So the excuse of not having enough time is like, well, it's either time now or time later. You can choose when to spend it.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you think that there is value in leaders and managers getting to know their people beyond them, the employee-employer relationship? And if so, how do they go about that without sort of crossing over that line of?
Yeah, I believe as a leader, we should, and I learned this the hard way when I was an executive, is that we need to appreciate the person behind the employee. So appreciating who they are, whether they're a single mom that comes in or a guy who's going through, chemotherapy, but they both come in and they don't complain. They get their work done. But understand like kind of what's going on in their life. I think it's really important to understand the full person. I think, in particularly in today's workforce, people want to know. They want to connect on a personal level, and I think there's great value in that. Now, does that mean you need to be going out to happy hours with them all the time and go and hanging out at the same parties and that kind of thing? I think there's probably an appropriate line to be drawn there, but I think even within the confines of the workplace, to make sure as a leader, as you're walking around and you're just going, hey, how's that project going? You're first asking, hey, how'd your kid's soccer game go this weekend, right? How's your mom's health? I know she's been ill, whatever, right? So I think people knowing that, what's the old saying? People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Yeah. So I think it's absolutely critical that you're going to get more, just frankly, selfishly, you're going to get more discretionary effort from your team if you kind of demonstrate in a sincere way. I'm not talking about being manipulative here, right? Yeah. If you demonstrate underlying sincere interest in them as a person and before an employee. So I think there's value in there. I think there's also a line. I think you could do that, establish that caring, closer relationship, even within the confines of the workplace, without necessarily having to, say that you have to socialize with them all the time.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that. And I like that because they bring their whole self with them to work.
Sure, that's right.
So, right. And so
everyone's got a story. Everyone's got stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So now let's talk about values and principles. Those were a couple of the things that you talked about before. Talk to me some about what the building blocks are for setting the values and principles.
Yeah, I think, again, the 4 levels of awareness: knowing your thoughts, your purpose, your values, and your emotions. So under the values, it's really important to understand what's important to you, right? And not just from a value standpoint to say, because these things are important to me. My values used to be, when I was a leader, it was Lee's 3 F's: fair, fun, and flexible, right? I'm sorry, fair, fun, and focused, not flexible. Maybe I should have had a 4th one. I'm not sure, but it was fair. It was fair. Fun. The flexible was underneath the fair, right? Because I wanted to be flexible. So it was fair, fun, and focused. And so I would write those down, and I would say, okay, team, because these are my values as a leader, this is what you can expect from me, right? By the same token, because these are my values, this is what I expect from you, right? So, so it's the same thing with any leader, thinking about what's most important to you. Now, I can give you some foundational values that most inspiring leaders incorporate somehow, whether it's in this language or not. At the core, the 3 foundational values are integrity, humility, and caring. And we kind of touched on caring just a minute ago, right? Yeah. So listen, what I would say, if you don't have integrity, no one's going to follow you. And they see that pretty quickly. And if no one's following you, guess what? You're not really leading. So integrity really is kind of the cornerstone value that whether you explicitly call it that or not, you have to be able to do what you say you're going to do, whether anybody's watching or not, right? You need to be doing the right thing. What's the kind of the mother rule? Would your mother be proud of that? So just doing the right thing. And then humility is also about putting others first. I always say humility is about thinking about others first. It doesn't mean thinking about yourself less. It doesn't mean like, oh, I'm lesser, but it means thinking of others, others first. And then the caring part is that people want to know that they want, you care, you genuinely care about them as a human. So those are the 3 kind of foundational values. And then from there, it could be anything. Again, I didn't, when I was an executive, I didn't use those. I mean, I think I tried to embed them into who I was, but I just had 3 other ones. But if you don't have those, whether they're stated or not, you're kind of swimming upstream in terms of trying to build leadership and coaching credibility for your team.
Well, and I think it's really valuable because you said it, and sometimes I think people forget this part, that being a leader means people are following with you, right? That they are following you somewhere. And so there has to be something for them to want to get behind. That's
right. Is there some vision that you have? And even if you have a great vision, like, do I feel good about following this person? That's really the first and foremost, even if you don't have a great vision, which every leader should have for his or her team. But it's really about, do I feel good about this person? right? And you know the old saying, people don't leave companies, they leave leaders.
Yep.
And we find that's true if you just do a lot of exit surveys and stuff. And you know, you could have a not such a hot company, but you have a really great leader. People feel very loyal to that person. And by the same token, you know, you could have a super company and a really crummy leader, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not gonna. People just don't hang around for that. So, and it's definitely that phenomena has been magnified with the new worker in the workforce. And you know, a typical kind of baby boomer just kind of would put his nose to the grindstone and just, no matter what the situation, what the environment was like, you just kind of work. I'm here. I'm going to retire. You know, that kind of thing. And now it's a much more of a free agent workforce, and people like, you know what? If I don't really like the way this leader is either investing me or interacting with me or respecting or disrespecting me, I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's what happens. So it's even more important that as a leader, we're kind of very clear about demonstrating the right kind of values for our team.
Yeah, for sure. Now, speaking of that and the team, there's a lot of companies, and there's certain philosophies out there about wanting your teammates to feel like owners, you know, to like really take ownership of what they're doing and feel like they are owners. How does a leader go about, you know, making them more like owners? Because it feels like there's a, you know, that's a tricky thing.
Yeah, well, there are actually three well-founded aspects to ignite ownership behavior. One is to have a financial stake in the business. Now, that's not really what it sounds like. So it's not like everyone has to have equity in the business, but you just have to feel that if I perform, I have some potential financial improvement, whether I get a better merit increase that year, or maybe I have a bonus, or the company's going to match my 401k at a higher level if we perform well, but some potential financial interest in success. Now, what happens is a lot of companies, particularly startups, you know, give some people equity and think, okay, I get ownership behavior now. That's it, right? And that's necessary, but not sufficient. It requires the other two things also, and that is communication about the business. So in other words, people have to know what's going on in the business. So even if I have a financial stake, if I don't really know what's going on, it's hard for me to kind of really act like an owner. And so we want to communicate. We call them the fundamental 4 questions. It's where are we going? What are we doing to get there? How do I contribute? And what's in it for me? So if you want to shorthand those, it's really about what are our goals, plans, roles, and rewards, right? What's the goal? What are the plans to get there? What's my role? And what are my rewards? So just basic communication about the business. So it's financial stake in the business, communication about the business, and then some control over your work. People want some autonomy, some way to be able to say, I have some say into how I'm going to achieve these objectives. So those are the 3 components that are actually fairly predictable over time. If you can incorporate that into your team, you're much more likely to get what people call kind of ownership behavior, which to me is really just getting discretionary effort from your team, people spending the team's and the company's resources like they're their own, but also people thinking about ways to improve themselves and the business when they're not necessarily at the office or in the plant, right? It's they're driving to work. As a client of mine used to say, you know, I want people thinking about me when they're driving down the highway to come to work, right? And so if you want that kind of discretionary effort, and when I say that, a lot of times it's discretionary thought, right? It's ideas, people coming up with new ideas and new improvements. It's not just the hands and feet, it's the mind and the heart that they want to get that discretionary effort and thinking from.
Yeah, it's so valuable, and I love this. You know, you have to fill them in on the business. They have to know what's going on. You have to trust them.
That's right.
To use that information in the best possible way, and that not telling them what's going on with the business can be dangerous, because then they come to their own conclusion.
That's right. In fact, they fall into what we call the silent spiral, Diane. So if I don't tell you what's going on in the business, and all of a sudden you start to see maybe my office door closed a little more frequently, all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my gosh, this door's closed. Oh my gosh, he walked by me on his way to lunch yesterday and he didn't say anything. Oh no, they're going to sell the company. I'm going to lose my job. It's, you know, and so we fall in the silent spiral, which means your silence leads to doubt, leads to fear, leads to panic, leads to worst case thinking. So if you can almost picture a spiral in your mind starting at the top, silence, doubt, fear, panic, worst case thinking down at the bottom. And so we come up with these worst case scenarios that really don't reflect reality. But if we don't proactively as a leader, answer those fundamental 4 questions I talked about before: goals, plans, roles, and rewards, people will naturally, as human beings, it's not an assault on your leadership. It's just, as human beings, we have this innate desire to kind of fill in the blanks and make sense of our world. So if we only get a few data points, I'm going to take data, and whether it's right or wrong, and fill in the rest. And if I'm down here at this worst case scenario, I'm going to fill in all kinds of stuff. And then you start getting, rumor mills and all that. And then it's not healthy, and it's wasted energy. So
right.
The challenge is, as a leader, we need to stay ahead of those informal channels of communication, which unfortunately are much faster than formal channels. So we have to proactively answer those fundamental 4 questions so people have the facts. Don't waste waste energy on trying to fill in the blanks. We need to kind of paint the picture for them.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Boy, I mean, that is a huge piece of this. So, Lee, I really appreciate all of this information. Can you tell the listeners how they can get your book and how they can find you and what you got going on?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Diane. And we have lots of free resources on our site. There's a tab that says right there, free tools. You can go there and have at it. There's all kinds of self-assessments, top 10 list, video clips, and all that. And the site is thelgroup.com. It's just the word the, T-H-E, then the letter L, and then the word group, thelgroup.com. It's all right there. The books are there. We have a lot of other resources and tools. We primarily are a consulting firm, but we just try to codify our consulting experiences with our clients into the book, so everyone can to have a chance to see them. So we probably have about 15 different books out there. So anyway, the lgroup.com is the place to go. You could also, if you just want to get some leadership tips and tools, you could text the word leadership to 444-999. Just literally text the word leadership, 444-999, and you'll get no selling involved. You'll just get like practical tips and tools a couple times a week, some leadership tools on Tuesdays. On Fridays, we have something called Weekend Inspiration. It might be a quick video clip or a poem or a saying or something just to kind of inspire your weekend. So there's another way to kind of connect with us.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I like to thank the listeners. You folks are who we're here for. And boy, did you get some really awesome information here. And you can tell that this is a book when you're in a leadership position, this is a book you should be picking up. But I also like to thank our sponsor. To get a free trial of audible.com as well as a free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. As always, continue to prosper and be curious. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Great careers are forged out of great relationships. Your success, whatever your field, relies and thrives on the support and insights of others. I'm Andy Lapata, an author and speaker on the power of professional relationships. In the Connected Leadership podcast, I have the privilege of interviewing people from around the world to understand the relationships that have made a difference on their journey and how their insights can help you. From Nobel Prize winners to Olympians, from NASA astronauts to peace campaigners, my guests have shared some captivating moments from their lives and careers. Combined with experts from leading universities, cutting-edge authors and giants of business, the Connected Leadership podcast aims to inspire, educate and entertain.